Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome. This is a little bit of a new experience for all of us, I think. Um, the format of the next little bit of time will be that I'll try and speak a little bit and offer some general thoughts on the situation, and then also address some of the more technical halachic issues that are coming up. After which Simon will unmute anyone who wishes to be unmuted, and I'll give some time for questions and have a little bit of a Q&A. Before I say anything else, though, I know we are all as a community in a difficult time, having to close the doors of our precious Beit Knesset, our precious shul. Many of us in isolation due to either vulnerability or perhaps a member of our family being ill, and in general a period of worry and concern about our health, the health of our near and dear, our friends, our community, and concern and worry about where this is all going. On a personal level, I've been in isolation along with my family since Monday night. Unfortunately, my wife came down with a heavy flu. We obviously have no way of knowing if this is corona or something else. Baruch Hashem, she's okay. She's suffering from a heavy flu, but nothing more sinister than that. But on a personal level, just feeling isolated and cut off and unable to see family and friends, this is a difficult experience. I just want to spend a few moments just trying for us to reflect on what are we meant to be thinking about all of this and how we meant to relate to it all. And the first and perhaps most important point is we do need to embrace the uncertainty of the situation. As I said in shul a few weeks ago, part of what's so difficult here is because we want to know the future. We want to know where this is going. We want to have our concerns and our fears and our nerves reassured. And unfortunately, for now, that isn't the way it's going to be. That isn't the situation. Our anxieties and our concerns remain. And ultimately, this does reflect the reality of our world, and sometimes a reality that we blind ourselves to, sometimes a reality that we forget. We human beings are not in control of our fate the whole time, and we are biyad Hashem, we are in the hands of Hashem. And this is an opportunity for us to remind ourselves of the concepts of bitochen, of trust in Hashem. Bitochen doesn't mean a cheap and trivial guarantee that everything will be okay. It means that we are in the hands of Hashem, and ultimately He has a plan and a purpose for us, and this is certainly what we need to focus on at this time. I'm not going to go after, and I don't think we should go after suggestions about what might be the reason for this, or what particular segula or spiritual cure is there to the situation. I think in many ways, if we try and seek out that sort of magical solution, albeit cloaking it in the world of spirituality and so on, then we're missing the point in a sense. We're yet again trying to find out how can we be in control of what's going on, when ultimately what the situation is, we're not in control. Ultimately, the situation is that we don't know everything, and we don't always have all the answers, and that unfortunately leaves many of us in a difficult situation. Equally, though, we should recognize that, thank God, we live ultimately in a blessed time. We live in a time of great safety, and as things stand, the scientists are working on the situation, and hopefully this will be behind us in a period of weeks or months' time, and we'll be able to emerge hopefully stronger from this, and also hopefully perhaps having had some of the sobering experience reminding us of perhaps things that we anyway know but sometimes forget. The isolation we experience, the vulnerability and uncertainty we experience reminds us of the isolation and sometimes vulnerability that sadly many feel a lot of the time. Many of us are surrounded by community, by family and friends, but others find themselves alone. And perhaps this reminds us to think a little bit more carefully and closely about those who are more vulnerable, who perhaps lurch from crisis to crisis the whole time, whether that's financial, whether that's physical, or in terms of mental health. And perhaps this uncertainty that we're experiencing now reminds us how this is part of the reality of many of our lives at different stages and different times. And perhaps again, this is a little bit of a wake-up call to us to remember that and to use this as an opportunity to reach out to those who perhaps would appreciate our reaching out. As I said in the email that I sent, every hand we can't shake should be a phone call that we make, and every hug that we can't give can be words of encouragement and warmth that we give to people virtually over social media, or by making a phone call, or to the family and friends that we are able to be in contact with. And also, this is a reality check for us to perhaps engage in a little process of introspection. Whilst we can't suggest reasons and play God and try and understand his mind, certainly classic Jewish thinking tells us that a difficult time is a time for a little bit of introspection, a time for a little bit of teshuvah, and a time for us thinking, how can we be a little bit stronger? How can we be a little bit better? What can we improve in? And how can we grow? And we can grow in this difficult opportunity. We can grow in tefillah, in our engagement with prayer. Yes, we're praying alone, and perhaps this reminds us how desperately we miss having a community, having minyan. But did we always take advantage of minyan when we had it? Did we always take advantage of tefillah when we could daven together? And therefore we can strengthen ourselves certainly in tefillah. In Torah, there's so much available online and with resources, and we as a community are trying to put more online, but there's so much out there beyond our own community in terms of Torah and fantastic shiurim, and also in terms of chesed, whether on a personal note and personal level, reaching out to people who we think are alone or perhaps might appreciate an offer of some shopping or just a friendly phone call. And equally in terms of tzedakah, people are being affected very significantly by this financially, and if you are able to help, please do so, and please donate to the Gemach. I also want to speak for a moment about not just giving, but also receiving chesed. And sometimes we can be uncomfortable to receive from others. We may feel if we're alone and we do need that friendly call, or we do want someone to help us with the shopping, or perhaps if it would make a difference for us to get some financial support to tide us over, we may feel uncomfortable asking for help and reaching out to the shul or the community who are there to help us. And what we have to understand is that very often receiving and taking is also a form of giving. In this difficult time, people want to be there for you. They want to be able to help. In this difficult time, they want to be able to give to others. And therefore, I want to ask each and every one of you, if you are alone, if you need to help, if you just need someone to go shopping for you, if you would appreciate financial assistance, please speak to myself, to the Ner Gemach Gaboim. Confidentially, we will deal with this. If you need some physical assistance, please email Susan Pascoe, who's heading our chesed in that direction. But please feel free and comfortable to reach out. This is a time when we come together. And in the same way as I'm asking everyone who is able to do so to help, I'm also saying anyone who needs that help, take it gladly, and please God, you will have the opportunity to give it back on another occasion to others who also need it. I'm aware that I'm talking to a wide audience and everyone is in a different setup and situation, but for many of us, this will mean that we're spending more time alone with our family and perhaps our children and our spouses. And again, this is an opportunity for us to enrich our home and to make our home a stronger and better place, to make our home a place of greater Torah and greater interaction with our family and with our kids. Shimshon Fal Hirsch writes very strongly about this in his introduction to Chorev, and he says, if I could, I would shut down all shuls, because we make a mistake when we think that a shul, a Beit Knesset, is the center of Jewish spirituality. Because so often, however important a Beit Knesset is, the home should be the center of our spirituality. And we can use this as an opportunity to infuse our homes with ruchnius, to keep to our normal schedule, to keep to our normal program, perhaps, to ensure that this isn't an extended holiday, but that we're davening at the normal time that we would daven. I'll speak later from a halachic perspective, but even when we can't daven with a minyan, davening at the same time as others has an aspect of Berov Am Hadras Melech, of everyone getting together and bringing greater kavanah and greater connection through the tefillah. And therefore, if we can daven at the time of our normal minyan that normally we daven in, or perhaps if we don't always daven in that minyan and we don't make it there, but we can make this effort now to daven at the fixed times that the minyanim in our shul runs, then again, this is an opportunity for a form of tefillah together. And similarly, if we can be kaveya itim, if we can have fixed times of learning, whether in ourselves or over the phone with a chavrusa, or taking advantage of the shiurim that are on offer, if we are in isolation with our children, perhaps using this as a chance to learn with them. So often we outsource their teaching to our very great and fantastic schools, but this is a chance for us perhaps to be the teachers and to spend that quality time with them that we don't always get. I spent the last couple of days at home, and I've discovered that going on at home, my wife does more than I ever realized during the daytime. And this is an opportunity for us to get those time perhaps with our family that we don't always get. And this is also a special chance to do this. I will speak later a little bit about Hilchos Pesach and some of the Pesach halachas, but it is unfortunate that all this is going on at what is a very stressful time of year. I have the recording available of the pre-Pesach shir that I gave, and I'm happy to share that with anyone who wants it. And also for Ner friends and family, there's accessible to pick up the frequently asked questions. I have included in that leniencies that normally perhaps we wouldn't apply. Many of us have minhagim and practices to keep Pesach to the highest standards possible. And this is a very old tradition. This is the way it should be. This is the minhag of Yisrael, that when it comes to Pesach, we keep things on the highest and best standards. But equally, it's important to know the core halacha. And this year, it is appropriate, if Pesach is stressing us out, it is appropriate to apply the core halacha and not keep some of the extra stringencies that we've perhaps normally been used to. It's a time of stress. And many of us, please God, when this is all over, we may not remember in a few years' time some of the details of coronavirus and what's happened. Perhaps our children won't remember the medical details of what happened, but they will remember the atmosphere at home that we created. And in times of stress, the pressures come out, tensions come out, irritation comes out. And the main work at this time is for us to get on with those who are near and dear to us, who need us at this difficult time, to be there for them. And if we can maintain at home a positive atmosphere, a calm atmosphere, one in which we're not losing our cool, but we're remaining positive and we're remaining calm and we're able to get on with each other, this is certainly the primary avodah, the primary halachic obligation at this time. So yes, we need to make sure we get to Pesach in an appropriate way, keeping appropriately the laws of kashrus, but equally for us to focus on our interactions with others and to allow ourselves to arrive in Pesach relatively sane, relatively calmly, to arrive at Pesach, perhaps having prepared prepared some thoughts and ideas for the Seder and for Pesach. This is also something that's very important at this time, and perhaps even more important than some of the other things that we could be doing. This week I won't be able to speak in shul, but I do want to just share for a moment an idea on the Sedra, and I want to speak about one of the unsung heroes of the Mishkan, which is a utensil, a keli, known as the kior, the urn or basin made of brass or copper that stood there in the Mishkan. And every day before the Kohanim would offer their sacrifices, they would have to wash their hands in this kior, a very humble utensil. It's not made of gold and silver. It was just made of brass and copper, cheap metal. And yet it was an essential and necessary preparation for the avodah. Now the pasuk describes it as being made of the maros hatzovos. And I'm not going to go into all the technical details, but quite literally it was made of mirrors hammered together to form bronze mirrors, to form the shape of the kior. In those days, of course, they didn't have glass backed with mercury or silver lining to make a crystal clear image, but they used polished copper, polished bronze to make their mirrors. And out of these were formed the kior. That means to say that it's an amazing idea. Every day when the Kohanim would come to do the avodah, they would look in the mirror and see themselves. And I think there's a profound message in that. Part of preparation for life, part of preparation for the mitzvahs that we do, the chesed that we do, the Torah that we do, which we are going to keep on doing, the tefillahs that we do and that we're going to keep on doing here in these less than easy circumstances. But part of what we need to do is first wash our hands with the kior and look at ourselves in the mirror. And we look at ourselves in the mirror nowadays far more than we ever did. We live in the selfie generation where we're always photoing ourselves. Some accuse us of being a narcissistic generation, but there's something positive in that also. It's not all a negative. Perhaps we sometimes over-focus on ourselves, but perhaps also focusing on ourselves is not a bad thing. And thinking about what image we convey to the world, how our face looks like to others. Famously, Rabbi Zobin said, our faces are a reshut harabim, the public domain. He's borrowing the language of Shabbos. We know we have a reshut hayachid, our private domain, and then we have the reshut harabim, the streets when we're out in public. And he says our faces are public property. What image do we give over? Do we smile at the world? Do we spread happiness? What message are we giving off to others? And then what message are we giving off to ourselves as we look in the mirror? And sometimes we're in control of our own thinking, and we can look at ourselves in the mirror and we can say, "Oi, how tough things are." And sometimes they are tough. At the moment, it's not easy. And sometimes we can bash ourselves and we can talk to ourselves. We all talk to ourselves in our heads, and we can self-talk to ourselves in our heads. And perhaps we can say to ourselves, "You're no good, you're failing, this is awful, this is terrible, you're not too much." But we can also give ourselves nice messages. So every day when we look in the mirror, as we brush our teeth, or as we walk along the corridors of our house and perhaps we pass the mirror, just let's give ourselves a smile in the mirror and just look ourselves in the eye and say, "Zobin, you're doing great, you're okay," and give yourself that little smile. Give yourself a little smile and tell yourself that you're doing well. This is another opportunity for the avodah of a mirror, and we need to do that at this time. A mirror also gives us an opportunity to look at ourselves with some honesty and think not just how do we see ourselves, but how do others see us. And at this difficult time, perhaps when we are confined in ourselves or confined with family, perhaps this is a chance for us to think about the message of the Kiyar also, and think about, in isolation or when we're a little alone, what sort of people are we, and are we using this as an opportunity to beam out positivity in this difficult time rather than negativity. Before I go any further, I do just want to make some halachic points. And the first one is one that I've been asked to make by the doctors. If someone finds themselves on Shabbos, or indeed over Yom Tov, an upcoming festival of Pesach, with a high fever, with a worsening cough, with a shortness of breath, particularly anyone over 70, or indeed under 70, but with chronic medical problems, anyone who's pregnant, please, one needs to get immediate hospital support. This applies during the weekday, and this also applies on Shabbos and Yom Tov. If one experiences extreme shortness of breath, if one's puffing away, if one can't complete a sentence, if one can't walk a few yards without running out of breath, extreme shortness of breath, a worsening cough, a high fever, this could be a medical emergency. And if it even could be a medical emergency, we need to immediately make those phone calls to the hospitals, to the emergency services, and get ourselves in. A short amount of time can make a difference to our health. And weekday, Shabbat, Yom Tov doesn't make a difference. We need to call in for emergency services and send ourselves off to hospital if there is an emergency like that. Equally, we obviously need to obey the guidelines that are being given out by the government. At the moment, they're simply calling for an attempt at isolation beyond things that are necessary. Someone, though, who's displaying symptoms of the illness, or someone who is in the vulnerable category, has health concerns, over 70, pregnant, etc., absolutely in halacha should self-isolate, and it's really important to do that. If you're then able to call on family, friends to help with supplies and shopping and other things, do so. If not, please reach out to us as a community. But don't take those risks. Don't go off just for one job. Don't go off just for some shopping. Chas v'shalom, that can make a difference to one's health or otherwise. Those of us who are not self-isolating and are still able to go out, we should not be going to simchas unless very special arrangements have been put in place with significant social distancing. We shouldn't be going to the packed shops, and the moment the shops are packed, and this is not safe, this isn't the way it should be, we cannot send ourselves into the packed shops. If a cheaper shop is packed, and one of the non-cost shop type models has a policy in place in which they're restricting access to only a limited number of people, and therefore that is the safer route, go to that one. And if it costs extra money, so be it. And if the money is an issue, again, please reach out to us for support. But don't risk your lives by going somewhere that's not safe. And finally, I have been asked by the shops to remind people, buy what you would normally buy for Pesach. There is no shortage, but there's no need to stockpile. There is no shortage. Buy what you need, but don't stockpile. If everyone just buys what they would on a normal year, then there are absolutely enough supplies in stock, and there's no need to be concerned. I mentioned volunteering to help people. I mentioned chesed to help people. I mentioned tzedakah, and I spoke about the idea of receiving, also feeling comfortable to receive. On behalf of the community, though, beyond appealing for the gemach, this is also an appeal for general volunteers. We're trying to roll things out online, Torah, other communal resources. If you think you can contribute in that direction, please be in touch with myself or with Louise in the office so that you can help us as a community create a richer virtual community. I would love for us as a community to be able to take on a communal project at this time, perhaps each of us taking on a chapter of Nach or a chapter of Mishnayos to learn. And please God, in the very near future, when we are all back in action, we'll be able to get together and have a communal siyum when we can celebrate the completion of the learning that we've done as a community together whilst we are apart. And when we come back together, we can celebrate this. And again, if someone can help me volunteer to set up the systems to allow us to run communal projects like that, please be in touch so that we can strengthen ourselves in joint Talmud Torah at this difficult time. I'm now going to spend a few moments talking about some of the halachas that I think are important to mention. This is not going to be running through all of Hilchos Pesach. As I said, I have already given the pre-Pesach shir, and between that and the frequently asked questions and the Pesach Shaila WhatsApp groups, I think I've dealt with most of the nitty-gritty of preparing for Pesach that needs to be addressed. There will be time afterwards for Q&A, and if there's any particular things that people want to ask about that, I'm happy to give some time towards that. But for now, I just want to speak about some of the halachas associated with the current circumstances, which aren't easy. And I haven't had time to completely sort these out in a logical order, so please just bear with me, and I'm just going to go through many of the questions that I've been thinking about halachically, and also some of the questions that have been coming in to me at the moment now, connected with the current time. I was asked about the use of hand sanitizer on Shabbos. There were signs up in some communities saying that some of the hand sanitizers couldn't be used. Some of the on Shabbos, some of the personal hand sanitizers, some of the communal hand sanitizers, they absolutely can and should be used on Shabbat. Washing hands is the best method of keeping personal hygiene. Washing hands with soap, with liquid soap, but the hand sanitizers can be used. And the basis of this halacha is there's two possible halachic concerns that were voiced. Halachic concern number one is that in many of them one's converting a liquid into a foam, and on Shabbos we can't change the state of something, for example, water into an ice cube or an ice cube into water. However, liquids becoming a foam is not a change of state, it's simply aerating it, filling it with bubbles, and there's not a problem with doing that on Shabbos. The other issue is, the second issue is that of refuah, healing on Shabbos. There are situations in which refuah, healing on Shabbos is not appropriate, something that isn't life-threatening, something that causes minor discomfort. This is not minor discomfort, this is a significant threat to life, and it's actually hygiene, it's not healing on Shabbos. And the third issue is to do with rubbing in creams on Shabbos. And here I'll just mention briefly, smoothing a cream as a layer is indeed halachically problematic on Shabbos. So for example, if one has a suntan lotion, which one wants to create a smooth layer of skin, that is the potential malacha of memareach and should not be done on Shabbat. Similarly, perhaps some moisturizers, which one wants as a smooth layer, that should not be done on Shabbat, and that's both of those should be dabbed on. However, a liquid is not a problem to use on Shabbos. And similarly, something which one is rubbing in as opposed to smoothing on as a layer is not a problem to use on Shabbos. Most antibiotic lotions and creams, for example, the aim is to rub them in. Similarly, a sanitizer, the aim is to rub in, and therefore this is not a problem to rub in and to use on Shabbos. And indeed, in general, not using medical creams and so on, one should be very careful about not looking after oneself medically. But if one is unsure, please obviously feel free to ask me a shaila or a question about that. Secondly, just a couple of things in association with mechirat chometz. It is known that there are two methods that we as a shul offer to sell our chometz. We do so virtually by people scanning in forms and emailing them. And we do it face-to-face. In normal years, I offer a couple of times when people can come in with the forms. There are halachic advantages in doing it face-to-face, which is why we always offer it. It allows us to do a kinyan. It's a better method of appointing myself as your agent to sell the chometz on your behalf. However, this year, this is not going to be an option, and it is perfectly halachically acceptable to arrange the sale via email. So please fill in your forms, scan them or take a photo of them on your phone and email them back to Louise, and we will arrange the sale as usual. Many people have the custom only to sell things which are not chometz gomor. They wouldn't sell things which are actual pure chometz like pasta and like bread. I personally do not have that practice in my family, but many people do have that practice. This year, again, given uncertainties, many people would prefer to keep their supplies of pasta and other such things. And this is acceptable. This is halachically acceptable this year. This year, you can sell your chometz gomor. Don't be worried about your normal minhag. Sell your chometz gomor, lock it up, even pure chometz, even pasta, put it away in the cupboard, label it chometz, include it in the sale, and that is absolutely fine and appropriate to do. If you have frozen chometz that you want to sell, just double bag it. Clear out your freezer for Pesach that you can put all your Pesach supplies in, and then in the bottom shelf or bottom couple of shelves, keep your actual chometz, double bag it, label it chometz, and include that again in your sale of chometz, and that is perfectly halachically acceptable. A number of people have been asking about tefillah, and particularly tefillah without a minyan and the implications of this. Before I say anything else, I want to stress the shuls took a decision to close. The Rabbanim took a decision to close. I took a decision to close our shul. A most painful and terrible decision to have to take. Last night, Michael Pollack, who gave the Daf Hayomi shir, was the last man out, and he turned the lights off in there. And we look forward to the lights being returned back on. But for now, our shul, our precious shul, the lights are off, and the shul is alone and closed. And this is a terrible and most painful thing to have to do. But we did it because it's a time of pikuach nefesh, and we have to behave appropriately and sensibly. There's no point in the shuls being closed and people then going off and davening in private minyanim in people's houses. This is not the time to do it. The time now, the correct halacha at the time now is to daven by ourselves. People have asked me about davening outdoors in large open spaces, in their streets and things like that. I would discourage it. If literally everyone is very distant from each other, I can't say that halachically it's forbidden, but I think it's bad communal practice, because if we all do that, people are going to end up close to each other. And again, chas v'shalom, this could risk people's lives. So it's not a time for us to find workarounds. It's a time for us to accept the reality. And perhaps as we're feeling that pain about not being able to daven, to remind us, please God, in the very near future, when we reopen, to doubly and triply strengthen us and doubly increase our engagement with shul and with minyanim, and attend more frequently and in a better and more engaged way. But for now, as Ilan just texted me, only the Ner Tamid burns in our shul. How can we still engage with communal tefillah? We will be arranging forms of online tefillah tomorrow afternoon, half an hour before Shabbos. We will have a Kabbalat Shabbat. Ner's very beautiful Kabbalah Shabbos will be led by Malcolm, and Zoom links to this will have gone out. And we ask you to join in and sing along with it. Malcolm will lead the davening half an hour before Kabbalah Shabbos. Obviously, we won't accept Shabbos at that point, but we'll sing along and we'll have a brief Kabbalat Shabbat service. We'll also have, please God, next week, some joint Tehillim sessions and things like that. And these are appropriate ways to daven together. As I said already, if we can daven together at one of the fixed times of davening in the shul, and we have left up on our website the times of tefillah so people can see when they are. If we daven at the same time, that's both good for our own routine and also means that we are all davening together at the same time. And Barov Am Hadrat Melech, davening together at the same time is a better and enhanced tefillah, and is the right thing to do. I've been asked about a psak that has come out of Israel about saying Kaddish and other such things with a virtual minyan. I have looked at this in detail and have not succeeded in understanding the logic behind this psak. And I just want to speak about this for a couple of minutes. If there is an existing minyan and one is listening to that via a link up or telephone, it is correct that one can answer Amen to those brachot. And it is also correct that according to a minority opinion, that of Ramosha Feinstein, one can actually fulfill one's obligation. And this is why we said for those who are isolated and had no access to the Megillah, it was worth listening to the Megillah via a phone call. This is when there's an existing minyan that's taking place. However, using such a means to create a minyan is a different halachic paradigm. A minyan has to be created by people actually together or at least in physical proximity, sight proximity. So if it's indoors in the room or outdoors along the street where they can see each other, I do not think that halachically a minyan can be created via a Zoom link. Now, the source of this pasuk was quoted in the name of the very prestigious Rav Melamed. Rav Melamed is a very important posek, has written a wonderful series of halachic books called Peninei Halacha. They are available, by the way, in English and in Hebrew, and some of them are available online. Definitely worth having a look at. He is a phenomenal posek with an exceptional clarity of expression and writes beautiful halacha. And the pasuk was quoted in his name, and I was surprised at this pasuk, and I emailed him directly to find out what he really held about the issue. And he explained to me, to a degree, his halachic reasoning, and he put it forward as very speculative halachic reasoning. And then I will read to you the words that he wrote, because he is upset that he is being misquoted on the subject. And those of you watching the screen can see I'm looking down, and that's because I'm looking down at my emails at the moment now. And he said the following: Ach yesh lahadgish shuv v'shuv shenachon litbalel b'yachid. I want to emphasize again and again, it is better to daven alone and not with these sort of solutions. He said, Adif ma'od, it's much better litbalel b'yachid v'lo lasot shum patent. It's better to daven alone, not to find these sort of neat Zoom type solutions and through that say Kaddish or Baruch Hu or the like via Zoom. So despite the report out in his name, he is not an advocate of these types of minyanim, of saying Kaddish and Kedusha over Zoom. It's different if we want to use Zoom to daven together, to do a Kabbalah Shabbos, to sing together, to say Tehillim together, perfectly appropriate. But to think that halachically we can create a minyan through this, even though it's been created, even though it's been quoted in the name of Rav Melamed, by personal email correspondence, he told me that he considers such a halachic option as a possibility, but by no means a certainty, and he is not advocating it. And as a result, we in the shul will not be doing Kaddish and Kedusha and the like via a Zoom link. We do not have a minyan, tragically and sadly, and that is unfortunately the situation we find ourselves in. What should one do if one has yahrzeit or Kaddish to say if one's in one's year of Avelus? The advice I've been given, and Rav Melamed actually wrote to me word for word the same thing, is there are other ways of bringing memory to one's departed. The concept of Kaddish, if we look at its content, is not a memorial prayer. Kaddish says nothing about the past. It only speaks about the future. It says we want to elevate and sanctify Hashem's names. Those are words of Kedusha, words of sanctification, but we can create acts of sanctification through things that we do. And we can use Talmud Torah, we can learn something in memory of those who are departed, we can give tzedakah, we can do an act of kindness, we can do any mitzvah, anything extra that we take on upon ourselves. That is a perfectly appropriate and good way to bring an Eloi Neshama, to bring elevation to the soul of the deceased and act in their zechut, in their merit. And in fact, arguably, this is the better way of doing it. It's not clear in halacha that actually the whole time whether Kaddish should be our sole focus and our sole way of bringing Eloi Neshama for those that need it. There are other good ways of doing it. Normally, obviously, we would do so through Kaddish, but this is perfectly appropriate and correct that we should try and bring Eloi Neshama, remember those we've lost in a positive manner through tzedakah, through chesed, through Talmud Torah, learn a Mishnah, learn a chapter of Tanakh, learn a halacha, take on something extra, daven an extra tefillah, say perek of Tehillim, give tzedakah, do an act of kindness. These are all perfectly good ways to bring an Eloi Neshama. Going on and discussing some other halachic matters, I will post on the WhatsApp groups more information about how to kasher utensils at home for those that aren't able to do kashering in shul, those that normally kasher in shul. I will give instructions how to do kashering at home. Sometimes though it's technically difficult and there's no way to make it simple and easy. And similarly, sometimes it can be dangerous using boiling water. So I would say where possible, if you're not able to access the kashering in the shuls, and it looks like this year the communal kashering will not take place, better not to kasher, use plastics, use disposables. That is the hiddur this year for Pesach, not to kasher in an invalid way and therefore end up using chometz matter, and similarly not to kasher in a way that will risk burns and the likes at this troubled time. So I'm definitely not advocating and encouraging home kashering, but I will post instructions about how to do so for those who want instructions about how to kosher at home. I've been asked about many Pesach cleaning shilas. Again, I've tried this year to make things as simple as possible, and I've written it both in the FAQs and on the WhatsApp groups and in the recording, in many cases, core halacha about how to do things. And as already mentioned, I would be an advocate of thinking carefully before one takes on a chumrah in Hilchot Pesach, which ends up as a stringency in Pesach, but a leniency in one's mental health, or a leniency in one's stress levels, or a leniency in one's bein odom l'chavera, in one's shalom bayit, in one's interaction with spouses or parents or children. Better not to be machmir in Pesach, though obviously keeping an appropriate and correct halachic standard. I've run through in the various WhatsApp groups, on the FAQs booklet, and in the share, things that don't need a hechsher, or things that ideally should be brought with a hechsher, but this year we do not need to do so if we're unable to get hold of it. Some obvious ones: eggs don't need a hechsher. Fish, meat, chicken, as long as these are washed well, unprocessed, do not need a hechsher. Minced meat, minced chicken, minced fish definitely need a hechsher. But if they are whole, if they're not unprocessed, just cut up chicken and packaged, they don't need a hechsher. Meat and fish should be washed well. Chicken, there are health concerns with washing them, and therefore if they've been packaged and by a supplier or by a large butcher, then there's no chance of them having chametz there, and it's enough for them simply to be done cooked as is. Regular coffee, plain unflavored coffee, as far as core halacha is concerned, does not need to be brought with a hechsher. Similarly, regular unplained tea, decaffeinated coffee, flavored coffees, decaffeinated tea, flavored teas are a problem and do need a hechsher, but regular unflavored coffee and regular unflavored tea does not need a hechsher. All Earl Grey tea is flavored, and some of the tea bags have the new style tea bags, biodegradable tea bags, which can be made with starches, and again, they should not be used on Pesach, obviously, but regular tea in regular tea bags, or not bagged at all, and not decaffeinated is okay. KLBD has an excellent website, and on it they list actually a lot of the Nescafes and so on, which are perfectly suitable for Pesach. Olive oil, extra virgin olive oil can be bought without a hechsher. The other oils, we have a very lenient view in terms of kitniot when it comes to oil. Sunflower and rapeseed and all the cottonseed and all these are fine as far as kitniot is concerned, but they do need a hechsher. They can have citric acid put in the refining process and as an antioxidant to avoid discoloration, and therefore these should only be bought with a hechsher. Milk, all milk at the moment now, all the Chalav Yisrael at the moment now on the market is already kosher Pesach and is not a problem. Before Pesach, if one has trouble getting hold of kosher Pesach milk, before Pesach one can buy regular milk, Tesco milk and so on, but one should not ideally buy that on Pesach itself, but before Pesach one can buy it and then use it on Pesach. Salt, as long as it's unionized salt, regular salt, then it is okay. Sugar, I again spoke about, and the regular granulated and so on are also okay. The caster and so on have free flow agents in it, which can be problematic. So these are just some of the items, but there's much more details on the WhatsApp groups and in the FAQ booklet. People have asked about tevilat kalim, if they have new utensils and these need tevilah. It's very unclear at the moment whether tevilat kalim is a sensible thing to do. I would strongly recommend people not to go to the kalim mikvahs at the moment. The mikvahot that are there for tevilat kalim are cold, they're not warm, and they're not chlorinated. It's very different to the mikvah that is used by ladies, which are safe and are heavily chlorinated. These mikvahot are not chlorinated, and they're cold, and therefore I would suggest people do not do tevilat kalim at the moment in the regular mikvahot. If you are able to go out and able to access a lake or a river, the River Brenz and so on, if you could do so safely, one can do tevilat kalim there. If one isn't able to do so, then for this year only we will have to rely on halachic loopholes. And a halachic loophole is not normally a good practice. However, like any legal system, creative minds can always come up with a loophole. And the poskim do come up with loopholes for emergency situations, and this is such an emergency situation. So if you need a utensil and you don't have the possibility of using it, the ideal and best option is to give it to a non-Jew and then borrow it back so that it is not your utensil. If that's not possible, then let 3 friends know that you are mafgir it, that you are declaring it ownerless, and then you can use it over Pesach or when one needs it. When the situation calms down, get it back. Call back your non-Jewish friends and ask him to give it back to you as a present if he's willing to, or reacquire it and then tovel it in the mikveh in the regular way. But as I say, this year I don't think Tevilat Kalim is possible, and therefore we are relying on a loophole. Loopholes are not ideal; they shouldn't normally be relied upon, but this year Tevilat Kalim is necessary and not possible. Tevilat Kalim, as I say, for a glass and metal utensil is a halacha. It's a requirement. One shouldn't use it without Tevilat Kalim. We do not tovel plastic. We do not tovel ceramics, but metal and glass should be toveled, and I think that's an important suck to mention. Just looking through some other things that have been raised halachically, a number of people have asked about someone who's unwell and won't be able to make it through a long Seder. Similarly, people who will struggle with the quantities of wine and matzah that should be eaten if they are feeling unwell. I'm not going to answer that in public. That needs to be discussed on a case-by-case basis. And please be in contact with me if you think this is applicable, and I can talk through how to run a Seder if, chas v'shalom, anyone finds themselves only able to perform it in a minimal manner. But please God, we will all be well and not need to discuss these things. Medication. As far as core halacha is concerned, all hard, plain, tasteless tablets are okay. If it's a flavor tablet, if it's a liquid, if it's a syrup, a shiner needs to be asked, and there can be serious kashrut issues with them over Pesach. But if it is a plain, hard, tasteless tablet, it can be taken, and no shiner needs to be asked. If you have any other medication that isn't a plain, hard, tasteless tablet, please email me or WhatsApp me or call me as soon as possible so that research can be carried out on it. The KLBD website has information about a lot of medicines, but if you can't find your medicine then please be in contact with me, and I'll research it for you in time for Pesach, if you are in touch sooner rather than later. One concern looming this year is that of ibuprofen for children. Ibuprofen syrups, like and so on, are often not kosher Pesach. In previous years, we've had paracetamol syrup or Panadol syrup that is kosher Pesach. I think rosemary and others have been kosher Pesach. This year, at the moment, it is looking like there's no children's syrup that is kosher Pesach. I'm going to hold off and see if anything comes to light. I believe the Beit Din, again, the London Beit Din, are working on it as we talk. If nothing else comes to light, then again, through the WhatsApp groups, I will give guidance about how to give your children and how to store non-kosher Pesach medication over Pesach, and I'll do that via the WhatsApp group and other things. And again, please feel free to be in contact with me close to the time, but I'm still hoping a solution will be found. In the meantime, though, if you're able to buy these syrups and so on, do so, and you'll have them at home. If there's a solution found, another alternative kosher Pesach option, then you can always include them in your sale. And if one isn't, then I'll give halachic advice about how to handle that. I'll mention one more halacha before perhaps I pause and take time for some questions, because I think I've been doing a lot of talking. Some concern has been raised about the siyum. For those of you who are firstborns, how to do the siyum on Erev Pesach. We have a couple of members of our community who will be completing a section, completing a Masechta, and we will arrange a Zoom link for the siyum. This is perfectly acceptable, even though I explained that a Zoom link for a minyan is not so clear-cut. However, when it comes to a siyum, which is a celebration of completion of learning, if we can celebrate together via Zoom or social media, that's an appropriate way to do so. And definitely, people should not be fasting this year if they don't manage to get to a siyum. We all need our strength. But we will be arranging a virtual siyum for all of us to enjoy together, and I look forward to meeting you at that siyum, please God. I'm now going to pause, and anyone who wishes to unmute themselves, is the word unmute or demute themselves? Unmute themselves and ask a question, please feel free to do so. Similarly, you can use the chat feature in the Zoom to send me a written message if you want to do so. In fact, there's a couple of questions that have come through, and if you wish to, you can email me at Rabbi Zobin on rabbizobin@gmail.com, and I'll check my emails also and take questions like that. So please feel free to ask anything either online or with the chat feature, and unmute yourself before you ask.
Okay, everybody, I'm going to give you the ability to unmute yourself. Please show some meeting etiquette, and if you're not talking, go back on mute. And when you finish your question, please go back on mute. Thank you. Okay, you now have the ability to unmute yourself.
Okay. Till anyone speaks, I'll take. I'll just deal with some of the Zoom group chat questions that have come up. I've already mentioned. Someone pointed out that the Nair Talmud is still on. Is the hand wash, that is gel that turns to a liquid as one wipes his hands, permitted on Shabbos? Yes, the answer is yes. As I said, the hand wash that is gel that turns to a liquid is allowed. Someone posted sugar-coated pills. Sugar-coated pills are potentially a problem. Please ask me about the particular medication if you want to know about it. Someone asked me again to please clarify the process of what I said about how to deal with utensils and tevilas kelim. There are two options. Option number one is if you have a non-Jew, you can give it to them as a gift and then borrow it back from them. If you have a neighbor or someone like that who's happy to help. If you don't have that option, then you should be mafgir it. That means just text 3 of your Jewish friends and tell them that these particular items, the pot and the pan and so on, is hefka. Anyone is welcome to take it, and in the meantime you're using it as hefka. Normally not an ideal solution, a bit of a workaround and a loophole, but halachically fine this year if one does not have access to tevilat kelim. Someone asked if we're on lockdown across the country over Pesach, and the mechirat chometz is done with someone who is not able to access the chometz over Pesach. Is that a problem? The answer is no, it isn't a problem. We will arrange the mechirat chometz in the normal manner. Flavored migraine relief sachets on Pesach, potentially a problem. Flavored migraine relief sachets should not be used. I'll pause for a moment in case anyone wants to ask anything live, and if not, I'll carry on working my way through the questions.
Hello?
Hello, yes.
Oh, hello, Rav. It's Deborah Drukars here. I wish you well and your wife, Refuah Shalema. I just wanted to ask, in light of the present circumstances, are you recommending for us to keep our Sidarim much smaller than usual in terms of numbers of participants?
The answer is yes, and I'll say a twofold answer. Those who are in the vulnerable category, health conditions, over 70, pregnant and so on, should not be inviting guests at all. Those who are not in the vulnerable category, I would still recommend, unfortunately, not inviting guests or limiting your guests. And I am aware that this will pose very, very sad difficulties on those who normally would be part of the Seder. It doesn't bear contemplating. But unfortunately, we have to, at this particular stage, look after our health. And that is the situation. Those who are vulnerable definitely should not invite guests. Those who are not vulnerable, seek your own medical advice. I'm not a doctor, but I would strongly encourage people not to invite guests this year. And it's a most painful situation to be in. And let all of us commit here and now that, please God, every year in future we will invite, and not just our Seder, but at every opportunity, invite people, not just our friends and those who we enjoy socializing with, but those who would really appreciate an invitation. Very difficult time for all of us at the moment. Just going, if anyone wants to interrupt or ask questions live, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, I'll carry on. I'll carry on taking the questions that are written. I was asked about people doing Daf Yomi and haven't yet made a Siyum on Brachos. If you haven't yet made a Siyum on Brachos, you can relearn the last paragraph or two, and you can use that for your own Siyum. You can make your own Siyum. I was asked here about a family, a Seder with core family. Someone wrote about the monks' Kalim mikvah, easy and quiet to use. Do I feel it's safe to use as well? I spoke to doctors about this, and I was advised that it is not recommended to use the Kalim mikveh. People dip their hands into the Kalim mikveh. It's cold, it's not chlorinated, the virus can live on there, and then you come along and dip your utensil in, and God forbid can pick up the virus. We all know that actually doctors do not have certainty and clarity at the moment, and no doctor is going to say this is definitely dangerous, but none of them can reassure us that it is dangerous, and their medical intuition is that this is best avoided, and therefore I do not think we should be using the Kalim mikveh at the moment. I was asked about use of hand sanitizer on Pesach. Are there kashrut issues due to the alcohol content and so on? And the answer is no, one can use them. They are not kashrut issues, one can use them. On Pesach, I was asked about inviting family members who are not from and otherwise will not go to a Seder. What can I say? I don't think we should be inviting them either this year. And I understand that that's a very painful position to find ourselves in. Before I take further questions, maybe I can just, are there any other live questions that anyone wants to ask?
Yes. Can I ask a question,
Johnny?
Johnny Brzezinski, you did say that you can't say Kaddish and you can't do other things at a virtual minyan. I have been joining the virtual minyan at Norris Sleeve for the last 2 days, and I want to tell you that it is emotionally it's quite fantastic to be joining with other people, especially where you're being isolated, and especially to come together for tefillah. So even if we're not saying Baruch Hu, we're not saying Kaddish Rabbanan, could we not have a virtual minyan that on Zoom where we were at least davening? Somebody was leading the tefillah as we're all used to.
Okay, Johnny, thank you for that. We can do and are happy to do whatever we have the volunteers to help us do. If you are happy, and we'll take this conversation off group, to help us set up the Zoom meetings and lead tefillah or coordinate a rota of people to lead tefillot, I would be very happy for that to happen. From a halachic perspective, I simply commented, and it's no news to you that different rabbis take different stances, and this is nothing I said was intended as a criticism of rabbis who take a different halachic view. However, the source for this idea that one can say Kaddish and Kedusha in such a manner is Rav Melamed, and he is not advocating it, and I had personal communication. However, getting together to daven, absolutely. And if you're happy and we can take this off group to put together a group that can help us get this off the ground, then absolutely, and I would be delighted myself to join in with it, as I'm sure with many others. I think this is a fantastic, yes, you're absolutely right, fantastic to still be able to daven together. We simply haven't managed to get everything up and running in the same way as perhaps some of the larger shuls have, and equally we're not part of a larger network like the United Synagogue, but we would love to do that along with other initiatives, so yes.
Thank you.
I was asked about using a regular Shabbos urn for Pesach, and also I'll answer that first, and then there's a lot of questions I'm being asked about spray vitamins, about capsules and things like that. The medicine questions I'm not going to address on this group. I'll take off group on a personal level, because I don't want to give generalized psaq about all these things. But in terms of kushering an urn can be kushered by filling it with water up to the safe level, heating it to maximum, and that self-kushers it. Some of the bubbling hot boiling water should then be run out through the tap, and similarly one should pour boiling water out of a kettle over the tap, and that kushers the urn. If the lid has been used in direct contact with chametz, for example, one rested one's challah on top of the lid, then that should be wrapped in silver foil over Pesach, or alternatively kushered in the other manner of dipping it into boiling water. Obviously, though, health considerations taken into account, it can be careful when you do that. Okay, I've also been asked about Virtual shivers. And someone commented here that a virtual shiva, and it seems to go very well for the visitors and the Avelim. Yes, I mean, look, a shiva and bikur cholim, visiting those who are unwell, is a form of gemilas chasodim, and absolutely can be done virtually, and that's a very good use of modern technology. Go to a virtual shiva, give someone a phone call, whatever method of visiting people who are in shiva or alone or bikur cholim and so on should be done and should be accessed. I was asked about salmon from Tesco. Is it okay, or only from kosher shops? No, salmon from Tesco is okay, and it's fine. As I said, just rinsed well, and that's absolutely okay. I was asked to clarify, am I saying it is forbidden for people over 70 or those vulnerable people who are diabetic or pregnant to go out, and that they are obligated to stay at home? The answer is, generally speaking, yes, that is what I'm saying. Again, each person should seek medical advice. And maybe there are unusual circumstances. Obviously, if I'm staying at home and literally has no food and so on, then it would be perhaps more dangerous to stay at home. But reach out to the community and let us help you in that. But basically speaking, the very clear medical advice we have been given is that if you are over 70 or vulnerable, you should be staying at home. And that's what one should do. One should stay at home and self-isolate, unfortunately. What if one member of a household is isolating from the others? Should they do Seder alone in a room? I was asked. Again, I suggest one gets medical advice about this. I'm not sure what the current advice is with self-isolation, if it's enough to have a 2 meter or 3 meter gap or not. Perhaps if one of the doctors in the group can comment on that, that will help me know. I'm not sure what the answer is. But that is allowed. What should be done with respect to laning? We're not able to have Kriyas HaTorah again because we do not have a minyan. However, one should read Kriyas HaTorah on Shabbos, read the Parsha and Haftorah from a Chumash, and this counts as a fulfillment of one's personal obligation to go through the Sedra, which is the halachic concept of Shnaim Mikra V'Echad Targum, even though it doesn't count as a technical fulfillment of Kriyas HaTorah.
To self-isolate at home, you should be in a separate room if you've got symptoms.
Sorry, Charlotte, can you say that a little louder?
So if you've got symptoms, rather than actually just staying 2 meters away in your house, you should actually be in a separate room, ideally. Use a separate bathroom where possible. If not, use separate towels and try to keep us really stay into a room yourself as much as possible.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for clarifying that. Just trying to look at the questions. I was asked whether I'm talking about koshering a metal urn or even a plastic urn, and even a plastic urn is it can be koshered. Hard plastic can be koshered in this manner. I think that there's some debate around koshering of hard plastic. However, my view is one can, and certainly for an urn which isn't really directly used with chometz, I think more would agree that one can kosher. I'm being finally asked, and I'll take a last question on the group, and then perhaps one more live question, and then we'll stop. I was asked about, can someone still go to work, or do they need to work from home? At the moment now, I would suggest if you are able to work from home, that's the advice from the government, and I think that is that is the correct thing to do. I'm being asked here about hefka. You can declare it to any 3 people that it's hefka, and that is sufficient. There are no rules about who knows that it's hefka. And I'm being asked about using a hot plate on Pesach. A hot plate can be koshered very easily just by, well, a hot plate can be koshered by turning it, making sure it's completely clean and turning it up to the fullest. And then one should not put a pot directly on the hot plate, but one should put a sheet of silver foil, a small sheet of silver foil between the pot and the hot plate. I would strongly advocate not covering the whole hot plate with silver foil, even though that is what we have advised in previous years. It can be a fire risk. Simply put a small sheet of silver foil down and then put your pot on top of that, and that's perfectly safe. And that's enough. Koshering a dishwasher for Pesach, yes, it can be koshered. I'm just looking at the question. Yes, koshering a dishwasher. Make sure it's completely clean. Wait 24 hours since the last chometz use. Make sure you clean the seals, the filter, take the filter out, make sure that's completely cleaned, make sure there's no bits of food stuck in the cracks on the shelves and the pull-out shelves and so on. and then run it through on a cycle. Ideally, the first cycle should be run through with a dishwasher cleaner or descaler, and then a second cycle run through with on regular, and that kashers the dishwasher. Someone wrote here about akamoli, which is kosher for Pesach from Israel, which is correct. There is that available there. And someone wrote about suppositories for children. If you can get them and they are on sale in Israel but not here, then again that's a good solution for Pesach. But if you can't get that, then one can. I was asked here about being alone for Seder night, where it would cause exceptional emotional distress and so on. I'm not going to answer that on group. I do recognise that there can be cases which are very difficult. Again, please be in contact with myself discreetly, and we can talk about that. Diet Coke being kitnius. Diet Coke has to be bought with a hechsher, kosher Pesach hechsher on Pesach. However, even if it says le'ochle kitniot bilvad, that it's only for Sfardim who eat kitniot, it can still be eaten by Ashkenazim. There are poskim who think that the sweetener used is a problem of kitniot. Other poskim take the view, and this is my view and the view of my esteemed predecessor, Rabbi Kimchi, that because of the way it's manufactured and processed, there's a significant change that takes place, and one doesn't need to be concerned about kitniot with Diet Coke. However, Diet Coke, like all fizzy drinks, definitely needs to be supervised for Pesach. I'll take just really 2 more questions because they're coming in very fast, and I don't want to keep people on too long. The Pesach FAQ book, how can it be obtained now the shul is closed? It can still be delivered to you. Email Louise and she can make arrangements for you. I'm asked about recording available after the Zoom ends. Simon can confirm this, but I believe it's being recorded. I was asked, can we be lenient about kitnius considering the circumstances if there's a shortage of Pesach food? At the moment, there does not appear to be a shortage of Pesach food, and therefore I don't see a reason to be lenient with kitnius. Maybe though, if kitnius has come up and leniency has come up, I'll just mention about children and kitniot. A child under 5 or 6 can eat kitniot, which are kosher to Pesach, without problem. So you can buy bamba and things like that, which are kosher for Sephardim, and feed that to your children before Pesach and over Pesach. Children under 5 and 6 without issue. Children, and in rare cases adults who have dietary problems, or children who are very fussy eaters, even if they're older, if they will only eat kitnius, and that's the only way to keep them healthy, you can feed them kitnius, but that should really be discussed on a case-by-case basis if they're over 5 and 6. Before Pesach, you can give all your children kitnius. So even if your Pesach cleans already and you're worried about them running around the house with chometz, give them kitnius. It doesn't matter if it gets all over the place, as long as the kitnius is not being eaten over Pesach itself. But you can give that to them before Pesach without a problem. If God forbid there is genuine shortage of food, we'll have to revisit the kitnius issue. But at the moment now, I don't see a reason to do that. I was asked about exercise indoors on Yom Tov. Now, this is an interesting question. Normally, Yom Tov and Shabbos, we do not engage in vigorous exercise. You can obviously go for an enjoyable walk or do a little bit of stretching and so on to feel good, but not vigorous exercise. One can certainly this year continue to do low-level exercises in Yom Tov just to energize oneself and so on. If someone is isolating and feeling in distress, alone or just rotten, and doing some vigorous exercise will make them feel better, this year one can do so. It's difficult to be isolated and alone with this difficulty. I just wanted to conclude again by saying, if you're struggling with Pesach cleaning and if it's creating tension, if it's creating ill health and so on, please be in direct contact with me. We need to remember that when it comes to the kitchen and food, obviously, we need to make sure it's completely clear. When it comes to the rest of the house, Pesach cleaning isn't a general spring clean. Chometz, which is crumbs and rubbed into the floor and so on, are not a problem on Pesach as far as Kor Halach is concerned. But again, if you're concerned about this, discuss this on a case-by-case basis with me. I'm going to stop here and conclude with the words I began with, which is, this is a reminder for all of us in this difficult time to appreciate the gifts we have in life, the things that we take for granted so much of the time, to realize and acknowledge our vulnerability, and sadly the vulnerability of many of those around us, and return to our bitachon, our trust in Hashem, and realize that we are biyad Hashem. We can use this as a chance for introspection, and definitely should use this as a chance for reaching out to others, for chesed, for tzedakah, and for enhancing our own tefillah and learning. Johnny mentioned this idea of having davening, and I think has kindly agreed to help us run with that. If anyone else has ideas or things they're happy to contribute with on a communal level to help us get together as a community in other ways, through learning, through Torah, through other activities, online programming, it doesn't just have to be shiurim, there may be talks, interesting things you can talk about and so on, please be in email contact with myself, with Louise, or really with anyone on the board, and we'll try and make that work. I'm going to go off now, but obviously I'm available by email, by WhatsApp, by text, and by phone for anyone who wants to be in touch. I will hope to deliver other future shiurim over the upcoming period via Zoom, and also please sign on to the WhatsApp groups that we've created. We have the WhatsApp ladies group, we have a WhatsApp social in which anyone can post anything, so it's a chance for anyone sharing ideas and creative things. Please start that going. And we also have, if you don't want that but you just want to get shul news, we have a Nair broadcast group, so sign on to that also. These are for members and friends only, so please don't share the links, but they've been emailed out and we will re-email them out. And also I hope to use that group to post links to some of my recorded shiurim, which I've given over the years and haven't shared in the past with the community, but hopefully we'll share now. And I'm going to put one online in a few moments using the WhatsApp group of a link to a shir that I gave 4 years ago, Parshat Vayakel Pekudei. It will be about something that I touched upon in my drasha this week, a very beautiful Meshech Chochmah. So if you want to hear a younger Rabbi Zobin from 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I will post that group for that. And I wish everyone a kosher Pesach, and we'll be in touch, my dear friends. Again, I'm missing you. We're there for each other. Be strong, chazak, chazak, and let's help each other. Thank you.